Looks like French President Emmanuel Macron is watching too many cheap action movies these days. Otherwise, what explains that madness that he exhibited in the gathering of 20 European heads of state and other Western officials in Paris? Macron stated on Monday that the possibility of deploying Western troops on the ground in Ukraine is not off the table, following discussions among European leaders regarding Russia's ongoing special operations, which has now entered its third year. Addressing the dull-faced leaders who yawned uncontrollably, Macron emphasized the commitment to ensuring that Russia does not emerge victorious in the conflict. While acknowledging the absence of a current consensus on officially endorsing ground troop deployment, Macron highlighted the fluidity of the situation, stating that no options are entirely ruled out at this stage. Among those attending the meeting were German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, Polish President Andrzej Duda, and leaders from the Baltic nations. Macron refrained from disclosing specific nations considering troop deployment, preferring to maintain strategic ambiguity. Now, strategic ambiguity is a new entry in the jargon of international affairs. It refers to a situation where a country or a leader or a group suffers a brain freeze and they commit to nothing while pretending that they're up to something. Prior to the meeting, Macron had urged European leaders to uphold the continent's collective security by steadfastly supporting Ukraine in the face of intensified Russian aggression on the battlefield in recent months. He noted Russia's increasingly aggressive stance and its preparations for further offensives aimed at unsettling Ukrainian public opinion. Highlighting the broader security implications, Macron underscored the necessity of fortifying defenses to preempt any potential Russian encroachments on other countries in the future. Nations such as Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, and Poland have been identified as possible targets of Russian expansionism given their unwavering support to Ukraine. The message was supposed to unsettle the Kremlin, but since it was delivered in French, it probably ended up sounding romantic. Dmitry Peskov, spokesperson for Russian President Vladimir Putin, was quick to spring to action, and he emphasized that such discussions aren't in the interests of the countries involved, urging them to consider the consequences. He warned that if troops were sent, it would inevitably lead to a direct conflict between NATO and Russia. This message, although not super scary, was delivered in Russian, hence it ended up sounding threatening. The reaction to Peskov's statement was quick and decisive. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz diverged from Macron's stance, stating that participants in the Paris conference agreed against sending ground troops or soldiers from European or NATO states to Ukraine, stressed that soldiers stationed in their respective countries would not actively engage in the conflict. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg, still reeling from Trump's verbal salvos, echoed this sentiment and affirmed, while NATO continues to pray for Ukraine, there are no plans to deploy combat troops to the region. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk clarified that Poland has no intentions of sending troops to Ukraine. Czech Prime Minister and certified Russian hater Petr Pavel chickened out too. Slovakia's Prime Minister Robert Fico, who hates the EU more than it loves Russia, stated that his government isn't proposing troop deployment, but bilateral agreements to assist Ukraine in repelling the Russian invasion. That's a very complicated way of saying that they are trying to push Ukraine to sign the peace accord. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban also laughed Macron's bravado off, possibly dismissing it as the tomfoolery of the youth. UK had no response at all. But on a serious note, if the West actually thinks about deploying NATO troops in Ukraine, it is going to be a catastrophic event for the West. Despite Biden's willingness to drag the war, no American boots are coming to Ukraine. And without the US, NATO's military is as effective as a stiletto on a frozen lake. So Macron should spend the rest of his remaining time in office in more constructive work like reading books and watching better movies rather than the grade B action flicks that he is watching these days.